Mm, Hello and welcome back. Today is December 6th, 2024. It's Friday, and we are reading chapter 30 of Lirael by Garth Nix. This is like the third time I've tried to record this. I got nearly all the way through the chapter and then realized that it wasn't recording after about halfway, so I'm going to read it again. Jesus, last night and this morning have been so crazy. I didn't get last night's video posted until almost midnight. I'd been trying to get it uploaded for nearly 5 hours, and then I realized it had stopped at 81% of the upload. And I don't know if the Wi-Fi went out or what, but if the Wi-Fi does cut out, then my upload will stop. And when the Wi-Fi comes back on, it won't keep going. So I don't know how long, it might have been hours that it was just sitting there at 81%, not going any farther. So I redid it. I I tried again and it didn't get anywhere past 1%. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I tried one last time, and that's when I made the post in the community tab saying, like, it says it's going to be at least another 3 hours. So I'm so sorry if anyone was waiting last night to get the notification that the video was up. I know some of you like to listen to this before you go to bed, but that's not going to happen tonight. I'm going to figure this out. But I've literally been reading for nearly half an hour. Now I'm going to read again, so I'm going to get back into it. This is a really good chapter, though, just so you know. So, Chapter 30, Nicholas in the Pit. He was young, Lirael saw, about her own age, 19 or 20, and obviously ill. He was tall, but stooped over as if a nagging pain bit his middle. His blonde, unkempt hair was clean, but hung together like damp string. His skin was too pink in his cheeks, and gray around his lips and eyes. Those eyes were blue, but dulled. He held a pair of dark spectacles loosely in one hand. The arms were paired with twine, and one green lens cracked and starred. He was standing on some sort of artificial hill of rough, loose earth, peering short-sightedly down towards a deep pit, a gaping hole in the ground. The pit, or whatever was in it, was the source of the free magic that was making Lirael nauseated, even through the vision. She could feel waves of it pulsating out of the scarred earth, cold and terrible, eating into her bones, biting away deep inside her teeth. The pit had obviously been freshly dug. It was at least as wide across as the lower refectory, which could hold 400 people. A spiral path wound around its edges, disappearing down into the dark depths. Lirael couldn't see how deep it was, but there were people carrying baskets of dirt and rock up and empty baskets back down. Slow, tired people who seemed quite strange to Lirael. Their clothes were dirty and torn, but even so, Lirael could see that their cut and color was quite unlike anything she'd ever seen, and nearly all of them wore blue hats or the knotted remnants of blue headscarves. Lirael wondered how on earth they could work with the corrosive taint of free magic all around, and looked at them more closely. Then she gasped and tried to move back, but the vision held her. They weren't people. They were dead. She could feel them now, feel the chill of death close by. These workers were dead hands, enslaved by some necromancer's will. The blue hats shaded sightless eye sockets. The blue scarves held together rotting heads. Lirael suppressed her instinctive desire to vomit and quickly looked at the young man next to her, fearful that he might be the necromancer and could somehow see her. But he had no charter mark on his brow, either whole or perverted to free magic. His forehead was clear, save for dirty beads of sweat that had caught the dust from the air, and there was no sign of any bells. He was looking up now, looking at the sky, and shaking some metal object on his wrist. Perhaps in ritual, Lirael thought. She suddenly felt sorry for him, and had a strange urge to touch the curve of his neck where it joined his ear, just with the very tip of her fingers. She even started to reach out, and was only reminded of where and what she was when he spoke. "Damn it," he muttered. "Why does nothing work?" He lowered his arm, but kept looking up. Lirael looked too, seeing the dark thunderclouds that roiled there, low and close. Lightning flickered, but there was no cool breeze, no scent of rain, just the heat and the lightning. Then, without warning, a blinding bolt of lightning struck down into the pit, lighting the black depths in a bright flash of incandescence. In that moment, Lirael saw hundreds of dead hands digging with tools if they had them, and with their own rotting hands if not. They paid no attention to the lightning, which burnt and blackened several of their number, nor the deafening crash of thunder that came at almost the same time. Within a few seconds, another bolt followed the first, seemingly hitting the exact same place. Then another, and another, thunder booming on, shaking the ground at Lirael's feet. 4 in approximately 50 seconds, remarked the man to himself. It's getting more frequent. Hedge! Lirael didn't understand this last call till a man strode out of the pit below and waved. A thin, balding man, clad in leather armor, with gold-etched red enamel steel plates at his throat, elbows, and knees. He had a sword at his side, and a bandolier of bells across his chest, black ebony handles poking out of red leather pouches. Perversions of charter marks moved across both wood and leather, leaving after images of fire. Even from so far away, he smelt of blood and hot metal. He must be the necromancer the dead hands served, or one of the necromancers, for there were many dead. But this one was not the source of the free magic that burnt at Lirael's lips and tongue. Something far worse than he lay hidden in the depths of the pit. Yes, Master Nicholas? Called the man. Lirael noted that he waved the 2 dead hands that followed him back down into the shadows, as if he didn't want them too clearly seen. The lightning comes more quickly, said the young man, so identifying himself to Lirael as Nicholas. But what manner of man, a man without a charter mark, would a necromancer call master? We must be close, he added, his voice going hoarse. Ask the men if they will work an extra shift tonight. Oh, they'll work, shouted the necromancer, laughing at some private jest. Do you want to come down? Nicholas shook his head. He had to clear his throat several times before he could shout back, I feel unwell again, Hedge. I'm going to lie down in my tent. I will look later, but you must call me if you find anything. It will be metal, I think. Yes, shining metal, he continued, eyes staring as if he saw it in front of him. 2 shining metal hemispheres, each taller than a man. We must find them, quickly! Hedge half bowed, but he didn't answer. He climbed out of the pit, leaving it to walk up to the hill of tailings where Nicholas stood. Who is that with you? Shouted Hedge, pointing. Nicholas looked to where he pointed, but saw nothing save the afterglow of the lightning and the image of the shining hemispheres, the image he saw in all his waking moments, as if it were imprinted on his brain. Nothing, he muttered, looking straight at Lirael. No one. I am so tired. But it will be a great discovery. Spy! You'll burn at the feet of my master! Flames leapt from the necromancer's hands and spilled on the ground, red flames cloaked in black, choking smoke. They raced up the hill like wildfire, straight towards Lirael. At the same time, she saw Nicholas's eyes suddenly focus on her. He reached out one hand in greeting, saying, Hello! But I expect you're only another hallucination. Then hands gripped her shoulders, and she was pulled back into the observatory as the red fire struck where she'd been and boiled up into a narrow column of fiery destruction and blackest smoke. Ice shattered, and Lirael blinked. When she opened her eyes, she was standing between Rael and Seinar again, in a pool of broken shards, with pieces of blue ice sprinkled across her head and shoulders. You saw, said Rael. It wasn't a question. Yes, replied Lirael, sorely troubled, as much by the experience of the vision as by what she'd seen. Is that what it's like to have the sight? Not exactly, replied Seinar. We mostly see, in short flashes, brief fragments from many different parts of the future, all mixed up. Only together, in the watch, here in the observatory, can we unify the vision. Even then, only the person who stands where you have stood will see it all. Lirael thought about that and craned her head back again, ice dribbling down her neck under her shirt. The distant ceiling was only a patch of ice again. She looked back down and saw that all the Clare were leaving without a word or a backwards glance. The outer ring had gone before she even noticed, and now the next was uncurling into a single file, leaving by a different door. There seemed to be many exits from the observatory, Lirael thought. Soon she would take one herself, never to return again. What? Lirael began, forcing herself to think about the vision. What am I supposed to do? We don't know, said Rael. We've been trying to see around the Red Lake for several years, without success. Then, all of a sudden, we saw you in the room below, the vision we've shown you, and then a glimpse of you and the man in a boat upon the lake. All are obviously linked in some way, but we have not been able to see more. The man Nicholas is the key, said Senar. Once you find him, we think you will know what to do. But he's with a necromancer, exclaimed Lirael. They're digging up something terrible. Shouldn't we tell the Abhorsen? We have sent messages, but the Abhorsen and the king are in Encelstier, where they hope to avert a trouble that is also probably connected with whatever's in the pit that you saw. We've also alerted Elamir and her co-regent, and it's possible they will also act, perhaps with Prince Samuth, the Abhorsen in waiting. But whatever they do, we know that it is you who must find Nicholas. It seems a little thing, I know, a meeting between two people on the lake, but it is the only future we can see now, with all else hidden from us, and it offers our only hope to avert disaster. Lirael nodded, white-faced. Too many things were happening, and she was too tired and emotionally exhausted to cope. But it did seem that she was not just being thrown out. She really did have something important to do, not just for the Clare, but for the whole kingdom. Now, we must prepare you for your journey, added Senar, obviously noting Lirael's weariness. Is there anything personal you wish to take, or something special we can provide? Lirael shook her head. She wanted the disreputable dog, but that didn't seem possible if the Clare hadn't seen her. Perhaps her friend was gone forever now, the spell that had brought her, meeting some condition that triggered its end. My outdoor things, I suppose, she whispered finally. And a few books. I suppose I should take the things I found, too. You should, said Senar, obviously curious as to what exactly they were. But she didn't ask, and Lirael didn't feel like talking about them. They were just more complications. Why had they been left for her? What use would they be out in the wide world? We must also outfit you with a bow and sword, said Rael, as befits a daughter of the Clare gone a-voyaging. I'm not very good with a sword, Lirael said in a small voice, choking a little at being called a daughter of the Clare. Those words, so long sought, sounded empty to her now. I'm all right with a bow. She didn't explain that she was competent with the laminated short bow used by the Clare only because she shot rats in the library, using blunted arrows so as not to puncture books. The dog liked to retrieve the arrows, but wasn't interested in eating the rats, unless Lirael cooked them with herbs and sauce, which she naturally refused to do. I hope you will need neither weapon, said Senar. Her words seemed loud, echoing out into the huge cavern of ice. Lirael shivered. That hope seemed likely to be false. Suddenly it was cold. Nearly all the Clare had gone, all 1,500 of them, in a matter of minutes, as if they'd never been there. Only 2 armored guards remained, watching from the end of the observatory. One had a spear, and the other a bow. Lirael didn't need to get closer to know that these were also weapons of power, imbued with charter magic. They had stayed, she knew, to make sure she was blindfolded. She looked away and took her scarf off, folding it with slow, deliberate movements. Then she tied it across her eyes and stood stiffly, waiting for Senar and Rael to take her arms. I am sorry, said Senar and Rael at the same time, their voices blending into one. They sounded to her as if they were apologizing not just for the blindfold, but for Lirael's whole life. By the time they reached her small chamber off the Hall of Youth, Lirael had not slept or eaten for more than 18 hours. She was staggering with fatigue, so Saynar and Rael continued to support her. She was so tired that she didn't even realize Aunt Kirith was present until she was taken into a sudden, unwelcome, extremely tight embrace. "Lirael, what have you done now?" Aunt Kirith exclaimed, her voice booming from somewhere above Lirael's head, which was kept firmly pressed into her aunt's neck. "You're too young to go off into the world." "Aunt," protested Lirael, trying to free herself, embarrassed to be treated like a little girl in front of Rael and Saynar. It was typical of Aunt Kirith to try to hug her when she didn't want her to, and to not hug her when she did want to be hugged. "It'll be just like your mother all over again," Kirith was saying, seemingly as much to the twins as to Lirael. "Going off to who knows where and getting involved in who knows what with who knows whom. Why, you might even come back—" "Kirith, enough!" snapped Saynar, surprising Lirael. She'd never heard anyone speak to Kirith like that. It was clearly a shock to Kirith, too, because she let go of Lirael and took a deep, dignified breath. "You can't talk to me like that, Rye, whichever one you are," Aunt Kirith finally said, after several deep breaths. "I'm guardian of the young, and I am in authority here." "And we, for the moment, are the voice of the Clare," replied Saynar and Rael in unison, lifting the wands they still held. "We have been invested with the powers of the 9-day watch. Do you challenge our right, Kirith?" Kirith looked at them, tried to take an even deeper breath, and failed, her breath wheezing out of her, like that of a toad that has been stepped on. It was clearly a recognition of their authority, if not a very dignified one. "Fetch the things you want to take, Lirael," said Saynar, touching her on the shoulder. "We must soon go down to the boat. Kirith, perhaps if we could speak outside?" Lirael nodded wearily and went to the chest that held her clothes, while the others went out and shut the door. Without looking, she reached in. Her hand hit something hard, and her fingers were around it before she looked, and gave a little gasp of recognition. It was the old soapstone carving of the hard-bitten dog, the one she'd found in the Stilkins' chamber, the one that had vanished when the disreputable dog had appeared. Lirael hugged it close to her chest for a moment, a faint hope breaking through her weariness. It was not the dog, but it was a hint that the dog could be summoned again. Smiling, she put the statuette in the pocket of a clean waistcoat, making sure its soapstone snout could not be seen poking out. She put the dark mirror in the same pocket, and the panpipes in the other one, and transferred the Book of Remembrance and Forgetting to a small shoulder bag that seemed exactly made for it. The clockwork emergency mouse she put in a corner of the chest, followed by the whistle. Neither of them could help her where she was going now. As she undressed and quickly washed, thankful for the larger room and simple bathroom she'd moved to on her 18th birthday, Lirael considered changing her clothes completely to wear something that did not identify her as a Clare. But when it came to dress, she once again donned the working clothes of a second assistant librarian. That was what she was, she told herself. She had earned the right to the red waistcoat. No one could take that away, even if she wasn't a proper Clare. She had just rolled some spare clothes into her cloak and was thinking about her heavy wool coat and its likely usefulness in late spring and summer when there was a knock on the door, followed immediately by Kirith. "I didn't mean any nastiness about your mother," Kirith said from the doorway, sounding subdued. "Ariel was my little sister, and I loved her well, but she was outlandish, if you know what I mean, and prone to trouble, always getting into scrapes and, well, it's not been easy. What with being guardian and having to keep everyone in line. Perhaps I haven't shown you, well, it's hard when you can't see how others feel or will feel about you. What I mean to say is that I loved your mother, and I love you too." "I know, Auntie," replied Lirael, not looking back as she threw her coat back in the chest. Even a year ago she would have given anything to hear those words, to feel that she belonged. Now it was too late. She was leaving the glacier, leaving it as her mother had done years before, when she had abandoned her daughter seemingly without a care. But that was all history, Lirael thought. I can leave it behind, start my story afresh. I don't need to know why my mother left, or who my father was. I don't need to know, she repeated to herself. I don't need to know. But while she mumbled those words under her breath, her mind kept turning to the book of remembrance and forgetting in the bag at her side, and the pipes and dark mirror in her waistcoat pockets. She didn't need to know what had happened in the past, but while she had always been alone among the Clare for her blindness to the future, now she was alone in another way as well. In a perverse reversal of all her hopes and dreams, she had been granted the exact opposite of her heart's desire. For with the dark mirror and her newfound knowledge, she could see into the past. And that's the end of chapter 30. So, I hope you enjoyed that reading. I will post chapter 31 tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I need to go put some Burt's Bees on my mouth. My lips are so dry from reading for so long. And I'm going to get to editing so I can get this posted on time. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Happy weekend. Happy Friday. I hope you get to do something fun this weekend. I hope it's warm where you are because it's freezing here. And I'll see you soon. Take care. And as always, may your magic manifest. Bye.